of like, okay, Carmen here, digital editor at Ms. And I am with Holly Rider-Milkovich. Yes. Like, I didn't do any name tests with anyone, so I'm proud of myself. Who is very excited to be here. And I am also very excited to talk to you. You are the Senior Director of Prevention at EVERFI, which is focused specifically around campus sexual assault, and actually EVERFI is sponsoring a track at the National Sexual Assault Conference on campus. Campus prevention, campus violence, all things campus sexual assault. I was like, all things under the great fun, not fun, but very important topic of campus sexual assault.
Well, there is a lot of work that we do that I do think is fun, because campus sexual assault prevention is also about promoting the positive. Promoting healthy relationships, teaching students about consent, which is also teaching them about like meaningful engagements with each other, having, great consensual, respectful sexual interactions. And that part is really fun.
Yeah. Well, good. Yeah, there's the positive. Well, and I was going to say, you have over 20 years of experience in preventing violence on campus.
Yes.
And in that time, so much has evolved in, the fight against campus sexual assault and rape culture on campus. I know that, I was active in the slut walk movement, and then was the director of my sort of feminist group on my campus. And even in the time that I was, a student, so much happened. And I'm just sort of curious, so much has evolved. What do you think needs to come next for students, for administrators, maybe at the state and, federal level, for making sure that all of the progress isn't, the progress is sustained that we've made on campuses, and that it expands?
Oh, such a great question, because we really are about keeping the pressure on the gas pedal. And we saw a lot of positive forward momentum as it relates to prevention over the past 8 years in the previous administration. And I think our goal now is to not only preserve that positive momentum forward for prevention, but actually to move it forward. I'm going to give you one example. So as a part of the VAWA amendments to the Clery Act, we now have law that says every incoming student in the country needs to be offered the opportunity to get primary prevention information about consent, bystander intervention skills. And it's also true for all incoming staff and faculty. But what happens after that first year, right? We know that the one and done is not going to do it. And so, does that look like a legislative mandate for there to be, education and training for those second years, third years, fourth years? Or do we say, this is something that we care about as a community, and we are going to create these opportunities for our students, and that we students are going to ask of it, of our institution? Because, the person that you are when you're a first year student is a very different person, right? Than the person you are when you're a junior. And, so not only do we need ongoing training, but we needed to really speak to the ways in which students grow, the different kinds of experiences they have, the different kinds of relationships they have, new challenges. And so I think that is the horizon that we should be galloping towards.
Awesome. And part of your work involved advising the Obama administration on campus sexual assault. And, obviously what we've seen now, just as a quick recap, is the Trump administration very steadily doing all they can to unwind the progress that we won under the Obama administration, sort of rescinding guidance, changing directives. And, a lot of that has specifically been attacks on campus survivors. And so can you speak a bit to how, Secretary DeVos and the Trump administration and the stuff that they're doing at that federal level, what's at stake for survivors across the country? And then how does this change the landscape, not just from state to state, which was already difficult to sort of overcome, but how does this change the landscape for, how we mount this battle while sort of hostile administration is in charge of, coordinating these strategies from the top?
the most important thing that I would say is that whereas that guidance has been rescinded, that new guidance is going to be promulgated. And when that new guidance is promulgated, survivors across the country should make their voices heard as a part of the new guidance setting. You know, what we know is that the best guidance happens when there is, you know, expertise and experience at the table. And so, you know, there's opportunities for survivors' voices to be heard individually through survivor organizations, but also through their institutions. And then, you know, what we've been also saying to institutions is when it comes time for that notice and comment, for those rules to be made, create opportunities to make sure that not only your campus experience and expertise is included in that process, but also the experiences of the students on your campus who have experienced harm and those that they care about. That you, campuses, have an important role to play in facilitating the most democratic possible process so that those survivors' voices are at the table and are being heard.
Awesome. And, you know, so I did a lot of work on campus sexual assault policy when I was active in my salad years. And
salad years, I love it.
And, you know, the campus administrators were in some ways my best friends. And then sometimes we found ourselves, you know, at opposite ends of a conversation or on opposite sides of a table or an issue with each other. And how do you think we can create more synergy between campus activists who are, you know, from the campus community and then the administrators who are accountable to so many conflicting demands when it comes to campus sexual assault? Like, if we're honest about sexual assault in our literature, does that make people less likely to send their kids here? You know, there's all of these things that go into what shapes the administrators, whereas I think students so often have an ability because of their unique experience to more straightforwardly be like, this is what we're going to do. And administrators have a lot of stakeholders to be accountable to. So how do you think we create more synergy and more harmony in those relationships?
Well, as you probably know, I spent 9 years almost, or 8 years almost, at the University of Michigan as the director of the Sexual Assault Prevention Awareness Center. And so one of my jobs was both supporting and facilitating an incredible group of survivor advocates and prevention advocates on campus who were students, and also negotiating with the institution. And I think that one of the key takeaways is for students to really think about identifying what their goals are, and how they want to be effective, and then figuring out, you know, what is at stake for the institution and how they can partner with the institution to getting those goals met. And not in every instance is there synergy, and there is a role for, you know, for students to hold institutions accountable with their voices. Absolutely, there is a role. And there is also a role for students to all partner with institutions when it's meaningful and when it's authentic to help get those goals addressed. And, you know, finding really great on-campus mentors who can help student activists make those decisions about, you know, when their voices that are sort of uniquely powerful on campus need to be raised to hold an institution accountable to its own values, its own mission. You know, and when there's an opportunity to partner is I think critical there. And both of those can happen.
Well, what were some of the things that you worked on while you were on the administration side that you're most proud of? Did you work with campus activists a lot?
I worked with campus activists every day. We had over 150 student activists, one of whom became a professional whom I just had lunch with. Hi, Caitlin. And, you know, and it was just the joy of my work, really the joy of my work. And so, you know, it was a process of listening to their experiences and you know, really being honored with carrying a part of their story and bringing those stories into administrative environments and being able to leverage those experiences from my own perspective to help shape policies, in important ways, but then also making sure that there's opportunities for those students' voices to be directly heard, which is a different kind of power. And so it's that, when I was on campus, it was sort of that 1-2 punch. Like, this is the information that I'm hearing. These are ways I think it can translate meaningfully into policy. And now this is and here's a story of a survivor who wants to share that with you himself or herself as well, so that you really understand the context in which this policy recommendation is happening.
Awesome. And what kind of policies did you see in during your work on campuses? What sort of policies did you see that worked? What are the things that people, what would you advise students and administrators alike to sort of fight for and work towards on their campuses?
I'm all about making sure that any student who has experienced harm has choice. So for me, all of the work that I did on campus was really, as it relates to those policies, was really about pushing forward to create more choices for survivors. And so one of the things that we worked really hard on at the University of Michigan that I still am proud of is creating a panel so that in an instance where information about a student's victimization comes to the institution, that there's a measured determination about whether or not that process moves forward if a survivor is choosing not to participate. That there is not sort of an automatic decision of, we have information, we have a survivor who's choosing not to participate, we're going to go forward anyway, despite what might be the unintended consequences to that person. That we had, a really careful, measured process. And that is, again, about making sure that the survivor's voice and experience is being heard in the process, their needs are being met, and balancing it with institutional obligations and legal obligations. That there can be this, careful balancing of those pieces. But, pulling it back to prevention for a second, the thing that I'm very excited that we did at Michigan, that I continue to drive forward at EVERFI, is, that we know that we need to be training frequently in appropriate, developmentally appropriate ways, on a regular basis. The one and done has never worked, and it's never going to work, but that we need to continue training. So getting, great prevention dosing and asking hard questions about whether or not the work we're doing in prevention is effective. Too few campuses are asking that of their programs. They're not evaluating that. They're not sharing that data back with their campus. And we don't ask, how is this effective? We will not know the answer to that question. And I think that it's a moral failing.
Wow. I'm like some truth bombs were just dropped, and I was not fully prepared for them, but that's great. I mean, one of my next questions was what were the lessons that you learned? So that seems like a good lesson. Make it meaningful. Make sure it's actually effective, and that you're measuring it.
Yes.
And
that you're sharing that back to the community.
Awesome. And you're presenting today on situational prevention,
I am.
which you also wrote for the Ms. blog about. I will link in the comments right after this. Can you talk a little bit about what situational prevention looks like on campus and sort of, the benefits of these sorts of initiatives?
It's a very new way of thinking about sexual assault prevention. It comes from, both the criminal justice world, the public health world, and the alcohol and other drug harm prevention world. But what it boils down to is this idea that while we can get so far in individual training, so, me sharing with you information that helps you shape your own individual beliefs, behaviors, and perceptions, that when we also shift the environment to make it more likely that you're going to engage in positive rather than negative behavior, that we exponentially increase the likelihood that we're going to have a safe campus. So it's about shifting our environment to create positive behavior and to thwart negative behavior. And so we're not used to, in the sexual violence prevention world, thinking about things outside of the individual or outside of relationships, thinking about what does the built environment look like, what does the policy environment look like, and how can we how can we change those to make it more likely that you're going to do great things and do fewer terrible things? I mean, that's really what situational prevention is.
Well, and can you just give me like a specific example of what
Sure.
that might look like for prevention of sexual assault specifically?
Well, you know, that's really where we're exploring right now. So one of the things we're going to be talking about is some strategies that are happening at Williams College, where they're looking at the way in which their social spaces are framed. You know, what kinds of information can we find out from students about the way in which lighting has an impact, the way in which sound, whether or not you can hear somebody or not, has an impact, what the crowd density looks like, how that can have an impact that cues either it's okay for me to engage in negative behavior or cues that this is a place where I'm supposed to engage in positive behavior. And so, you know, that's one of the things that we're looking at. But it's really new. It's an exciting exploration, and it's adding to the tools that campuses already have. So, you know, this is not going to be a new silver bullet. This is adding to the toolbox.
Awesome.
Yep.
And my last question is the question that I'm going to be asking everyone, which is, we're here to talk about bold moves, ending sexual violence in one generation. It's going to take a lot of bold moves to do that.
Yes.
What is your bold move? What are you doing after this conference to get us there?
Oh, so at EVERFI, I have this unique opportunity because we work with 1,700 campuses. We reach 5 million learners in higher ed alone. And so we're all about big moves on, you know, bold moves on the biggest platform we can possibly build. And so my bold move coming out of this conference is to really go back and, you know, to continue to push forward on having that ongoing education for students on college campuses, building courses that are effective and meaningful, continuing to do the research to make sure that the work that we share with those 5 million learners makes a difference in their lives, and then you know, pushing those messages out so that senior leaders understand how important it is that they embrace this work, they see it as connected to their mission, and they invest appropriately in the lives of students.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for taking the time
You're welcome.
to sit with me today and showcase our matching haircuts.
Woo, matching haircuts.
And thank you so much for all that you're doing. And yeah, I'm really glad we could connect. And everyone, I will post the links to Holly's blogs in the comments. So please read all of them, comment on them, share them out. And yeah, like, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
All right.
All right.